Hello and good day, Prime Minister Trudeau. My life was not always bad and violent. I did accomplish many amazing things. I just never shook or shirked the responsibility for investigating violent events because I was always employed in some form of supervision and training of adults. I went to the Ag College where I learned to use my uniqueness to investigate these kinds of events from 92 to 97 in Truro, Nova Scotia. From 94 to 2003, I planted trees in Western Canada, except for the 18 months I went to the US to do an engineering master's. In Canada, I worked in remote bush camps with as many as 100 or 150 people, although 50 to 70 was more common. I was employed to train new planters, and I was employed as a special kind of paramedic that allowed the crews I worked on to be of any size and work any distance from a hospital. This is in addition to my responsibilities for planting trees. There were often 5 or 6 people like me in a bush camp. In bigger camps, there could be as many as a dozen. The workers' compensation requirements was that one of the paramedics, had to be on site for every crew. So if a crew was big enough to be split in half and go to two locations, you needed 2 people like me. Within the camps, we handled minor issues within our own crews and worked together for major issues. It was more common for me to handle impalements, major burns, or breaks during this time. My personality was still my personality, and people still came to speak to me in the evenings as they always had. I continued in this form of employment until I had accumulated too many deformities and disabilities from manual labor, and I moved to South Korea in early 2004. I moved to South Korea in 2004 and by 2005 was working for the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education as a teacher trainer in the public school system. I had responsibilities for investigating and resolving issues in programs similar to Japan's JET program, only in Korea. There was the SMO program, the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education, which I was employed in directly, but I was also outsourced or lent to Korea's EPIC program, GEPIC program, and years later, the TALK program, where my responsibilities were the same. I was increasingly being called upon to resolve issues with foreign staff in the Korean public school systems, where physical and sexual violence was an issue. I moved to Japan in 2008 for a year, where I served in a similar role and returned to Korea, finishing my time in Korea in 2010. Over this time frame, I handled with increasing frequency the worst of the worst in the public school systems. From 2010 to 2017, I was employed in a multitude of countries, with some contracts as short as a month, while others, like Malaysia, lasted 2 years. Malaysia is among my most favorite of countries that I've lived in. I worked as a district supervisor for the Kota Tinggi province. It's also a town as well as a school district, so my title appears slightly differently on a number of documents. My supervisor was named Adrian, and he sent me all over Malaysia to resolve issues, as the project we were all on was massive, and other foreign employees knew who I was and what I did from contact with me in other countries on other jobs. The simplest, stupidest, and strangest situation I have ever handled was when the Malay teachers in Mersing, the province north of Kota Tinggi, asked that I come help with a female foreign teacher trainer that was always drunk and touching men in a Muslim community. They described her appearance in terms so horrible I won't repeat them, and as they turned out to be false, there's no reason to repeat them. I asked Adrian's permission to go, as normally he brought me these kinds of jobs. He agreed. My partner and I drove to Mersing and met with the teachers that had sent for help. We let them vent for over an hour as we ate lunch. They described this woman in very unpleasant terms and described all of the issues with drinking and touching men that had been escalating since she entered Malaysia a year and a half ago. They explained the local officials didn't want to do anything out of fear that all of the foreign staff would be pulled from the schools, and that the schools would be removed from the program that everyone was working in, and that this program provided so many resources for the poorest communities in the Feldas that the male teachers could just endure what was happening. There were 6 foreign teachers in Mersing because of the population density, and this had been going on for a year and a half, and my company hadn't heard anything about it. As a distraction and a break for the teachers, who were obviously very upset at over a year and a half of this behavior, I asked what was the most exciting thing that has happened that has nothing to do with this foreign teacher trainer. They explained that a few months ago, a desperate father had taken an entire kindergarten hostage with farming tools and machetes, that the army had had to come in and shoot him right in the kindergarten, and that everyone was still having trouble with the nightmares from the entire experience. I asked if the female foreign trainer had been there, and the teacher said yes, but she wasn't involved. She just witnessed it like everyone else. I asked if her drinking had gotten worse after that, and they said yes, but she'd been drinking long before this had happened. I told them that my boss would come down and that everything would be handled, as an alcoholic with PTSD from a shooting wasn't all that unusual, and she would get the help she needed, and the problems would go away. After the lunch, when my partner and I were alone, she asked if it was always this easy. My answer was, we aren't done. There are 5 other foreign staff members here who have known all of this for a year and a half and said and done nothing. Something's going on. Something's wrong in this community. It didn't take long talking to the foreign staff. They had learned to trust me because they had heard of all the other issues that I had resolved for my company and my boss without releasing the names of anyone involved. These types of things were discussed at the regular quarterly staff meetings that we all held. It didn't take long to find out the alcoholic was a supervisor like me and had threatened to fire anyone and everyone that said anything about her drinking. The other supervisor, as it turned out, enjoyed 3-day weekends in Thailand almost every weekend. It turned out that the 2 supervisors had agreements with each other that each would have the other's underlings fired if anyone said anything to anyone about what was going on in Mersing. It's unbelievable that this took a year and a half to sort out, and unbelievable that they were stupid enough to think they would get away with it. But these are the kinds of jobs that I used to do. There's no point giving any more examples of countries and predators I've investigated. The next video is the job in 2014 that I refused to do, that cost a child their life, and ultimately was the reason I was returning to Canada to speak to my government in 2017, when I was trafficked and kidnapped by my childhood rapist.